Grand Existence Cosmopolitans, I'm JD. This is my Pharmacopeia. And one thing that has surprised me about running this Pharmacopeia is that nobody has asked me about my little symbol here. Now, I'm sure there's some people out there that already know, but of the people that I know personally that I know don't know what this means, I figure I'll save you the trouble and just explain it to you here now, or at least give you a very brief rundown as to what this little thing is, because people ask me sometimes. It looks like, use your imagination, what does it look like to you? I'm going to tell you right now, this symbol is what the Renaissance philosophers, specifically John Dee, this is John Dee's symbol. He created this in the late 1500s at what he called the height of a mystical revelation over a period of like 12 days or 13 days. I don't know. He's got a very elaborate story going into how it came about that is reminiscent of many other stories of mystical revelations. But what we find is that he was trying to describe really the nature of reality, the fundamental essence of the original source of creation, the original source of being. And what they called these things were monads. There's M-O-N-A-D-S. There are other philosophers, scientists, theoreticians out there that also have created monads. And basically the philosophy states that all of reality can be reduced to a simple substance which is based in the ideological realm of existence, and that all phenomena, all things, are constituted of an accumulation of monads, which are ultimately governed by a higher monad, which contains them all within itself. So in essence, it is the root seed, the funkendating component of a fractal system. Now, Dee goes at length in his Monas Hieroglyphica, which I don't have a copy with me right here. 1 second. I do have a copy with me. Pardon that absence. You see this Monas Hieroglyphica, hieroglyphic monad. It's encapsulated inside of an egg, around which various inscribings and sayings and axioms. But essentially, this is a 7-piece, if I can use this vanilla bean to point to things, this is a 7-piece system. This monad, it originates here with the point. The point is the very center, indivisible origin setting, origin point. It's indivisible. It's actually a mystically origin point, a point of mystical origin. That's the correct sequencing of words. And it has to be of mystical origin because our reality comes out of it. We can't really conceive of intellectually what created the point. Only thing that we can really say about it, Leibniz, I don't know. I read these things. Nobody teaches me who these people are. I read them, so I don't know how to pronounce. But Leibniz, he wrote a lot about monadology, and he came up with some philosophical conclusions of the existence of the monad, and that is that idealism is the concept that the universe is generated forth from ideas, and that the original idea, a monad, is basically the living mirror of the universe, and that when you use these things, it's as if the universe is looking back on itself to self-reflect. Like this Before there was a point in the very center, there was just simply limitless creation with no form, no order, no boundary, no limit. And then the unfathomable intelligence decided to snap things into existence through the consecration of the central monad, the service of the central point, right? And so from the point, you get these other things. From the point, you extrapolate the line and the quaterny. From the point, you extrapolate the circle, and you extrapolate the hyperbola as well as these parabolas. And ultimately, this is a 7-piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 functions of this particular monad, because there are other monads out, right? The Greeks have a monad where it is just the circle and the dot. I've posted that on my Instagram before. That was how they represented the supreme being, the original being, the first entity in existence. Well, this here is supposed to represent essentially the steps, how supreme light, source light, stillness, right? The base simplicity, the prima materia of the universe is stepped and reduced down in order to create the physics, the optics, the materiality, the phenomena of experience in this world, right? In this earth, the one that we're all on right now, and we can agree upon. This is definitely a shared, universal, earthbound experience that we're having here. And it starts with the point, and then, gotta go to class soon. And then it ends with the complete manifestation of the monad. Now, the way you're supposed to use this is essentially you envision this thing, you visualize it, you put it into your consciousness, and you hold one piece of it in your mind at a time. And through concentrating on just one thought, this one thought just happens to be the source of creation, or the foundational blueprint to creation, the monad. Piece by piece, you build this up in your mind by thinking first upon a dot, a pinprick of light, or a pinprick of darkness. It's an intensely personal decision. Then you move on to the circle. You hold a circle, a perfect circle in your mind. How can a perfect circle exist in this world when there are no perfect circles in nature? Is this a perfect circle? Like, you get really close into it, and the ink and the atoms are separate, like lines and circles and parabolas. If you look into nature, they don't really exist in nature, yet somehow we are able to derive them from nature itself. Circles, all lines, these things come from the natural world. And this is an incredibly reduced version of the root of complexity in the universe. And so when we hold these symbols in our mind, which, as we know, like the Buddhists and the Hindus and the Tibetans and the Taoists, and you just keep going back and back, and you understand that there are meditative techniques where you're supposed to visualize certain forms, certain colors, certain sounds, certain gods, certain mantras, certain what are they called, mandalas, right? And you hold, and they're supposed to lead your consciousness into a heightened state of awareness to essentially non-locally bring on the energy of the entity, or the intelligence, or the spirit, or the entity that you are attempting to communicate or gain knowledge from, learn from, or evolve with. And in this instance, it's essentially balancing, in my mind, right? Because you won't find any books that have written this. This is just my modern approach to how to use John Dee's monad. In my mind, it is a meditative aid to build this thing up to which leads to the balancing of your consciousness, the synchronization of the hemispheres of your brain that will allow an inner vision to occur. Now, I say this because this is like the meditation advice that has been written forth by the sages of all time. Focus on a point, focus on an indivisible unit, focus on a spot of light, and hold it in your mind indefinitely until all other thoughts cease to exist. And then as you begin to experience the nature of these higher dimensional geometries, right, or these foundational geometries, you experience the foundational nature of yourself from different angles, from these 7 different fundamental principles. And these principles, these seven all correspond to days of the week, of course, sounds on the musical scale, they correspond to colors, they correspond to letters, they correspond to numbers. Okay, so what we have here really is not just a symbol of mathematical notation or a coagulation of symbols of mathematical notation. What we have here is basically a tool for self-therapy, a self-therapy technique. That's the way I see it. Something that is designed to harmonize and align the contents of your psyche, right? Buckminster Fuller explained that when you draw geometry and you think about different forms of geometry, it literally orders your brain to order your thinking in a pattern that is much more highly negentropic, we can say, a higher quality, what is the word I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for, and I'll probably comment it on the video later, but it is a means of ordering your thinking. And then when you order your thinking for long enough and you practice that practice of eternity, as Lao Tzu puts it, to use your own light to harness the source light and align with it, then it will show you things, right, that you perhaps didn't realize that you had the capacity to see before. Things that you didn't know were there will be revealed to you. So that's really the essence of why I have a monad as my logo, is because it is a meditative aid to help the consciousness basically reset itself. And that's by no means where this ends, because this came out of mathematical derivation. This came out of observations in optics and studies of light. So I don't want to reduce the meaning of this by any means, but I would like to extrapolate on what its uses really extend towards, because in the time these tools were created, there was lots of disinformation campaigns going on that essentially was trying to keep the masses or the world from realizing that direct contact with God through personal experience was possible. And that's why things like this and mysticism and magic and witchcraft all kind of fell by the wayside, was because people don't want you to know that or how to do it, and that's why they were all killed. So this is kind of like a tribute to Mr. D. JD is also John D. This monad is John D's. If you want to know more about where it came from, read this text. It's tiny. It's a couple hundred pages, 24 theorems, and it's kind of a riddle. Actually, if there is one person that you could read about the mathematical significance of the Monas Hieroglyphica and the geometrical significance, you should look into the work of James Egan in the Newport Tower Museum. It's fascinating stuff. But in essence, this is a meditation aid designed to unlock and balance your consciousness so that you can exist in a more harmonious state with yourself and the universe around you and the sensitive, subtle planes. So I hope that clears a little bit of stuff up. Again, JD, Nicholas Jensen Denton. Thank you very much for joining me here, and enjoy your present.